Yo, what's going on, everybody? Luka Magic is in the air. The Lakers beat the Clippers without him. And as we anxiously await his Lakers debut, the trade deadline is just a day and a half away. So let me get right to the point. The Lakers need a Max Christie replacement. Max Christie is now a Dallas Maverick. Sad. He had a phenomenal debut for them last night versus the Philadelphia 76ers. He was like 4 of 4 from three, had 15 points. Anyways, the Lakers need to replace that. So, are there any cheap 3&D ish shooting guards on the market that they could look at between now and tomorrow, Thursday, the NBA trade deadline? So, with that said, I have about 6 options that I think the Lakers could monitor. Don't ask me how they're going to do this because they only have one first round pick and one second round pick. Maybe they can move some guys around of value and get extra seconds, or maybe they can split their 2031st first up into 2 firsts and some seconds. I don't know. Don't ask me how they're going to do it, but these are just some bargain bin defenders at the shooting guard wing position that I think the Lakers may want to try and look at, or they may actually already be looking at. So, yeah, with that said, let's jump right into my list of 6 Max Christie replacements that the Lakers should monitor. And while we transition over to that segment, and as I pull up the slides, if you guys could please hit this channel up with a subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. All right, so let me put my spectacles on first because I'm an old man. Okay, first up, let's talk about a player that lots of Lakers Twitter has been talking about recently. And let's talk about the Charlotte Hornets' Josh Green. So Josh Green is 24 years old. He is 6'5" with a 6'9" wingspan. He is making $12.6 million this year, $13.6 million next year, and then $14.6 million the year after that. I kind of don't like that contract. So Josh Green, we all know him mostly from his time with the Dallas Mavericks. He's active. He competes on defense. He's a pretty good three-point shooter, albeit on low volume. He's shooting 41% from three this year on 3.5 attempts a game. And in his career, he's a 38% three-point shooter, which is very, very solid. And he's particularly really good in the corners, just like Max Christie. That said, I don't really think he's as locked down a defender as people seem to think he is. He does have a good motor, but he's actually not all that strong or physical. He tends to get blown by very easily. I've called up enough opinions from Hornets fans to know that they think he's a pretty bad defender and is only really a defender by reputation. So I would take Josh Green, but I'm also not that excited about him. Austin Reeves also always cooks him. He, outside of his corner three-point shooting, he's pretty limited offensively. And I honestly just don't think he's this rugged physical defender that people think he is. And on his contract, $12 million, $13 million, $14 million the next 3 years, I don't think I'd want to take that contract on. Maybe if he was expiring or only had a year left, I'd be more in on Josh Green, but he's just not the type of player that excites me. Although if you're just talking about a low-end Max Christie replacement, there's Josh Green. All right, moving on to my number 2 Max Christie replacement trade target. Let's talk about Josh Green's teammate, Cody Martin. Cody Martin is 29 years old. He is 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan, really good measurables. He's only making $8 million this year and $8 million next year, so a bargain bin deal contract. To me, he's probably the best all-around player out of all the players that I'm going to mention today. He's a solid defender. He's a good ball handler who can play backup point guard for you in a pinch. He gets good assist numbers. He's very athletic and surprisingly very explosive, very fluid player on the court. He's not a great shooter. He's only a career 32% three-point shooter. But to me, he's the definition of jack of all trades, master of none, 3&D shooting guard. Cody Martin is like if you fused Max Christie and Gabe Vincent together a bit, but with a worse three-point shooting percentage and efficiency. Or I kind of liken Cody Martin to being like a very, very poor man's Josh Hart. However, I will say that Hornets fans also don't seem to admire Cody Martin that much in the same way that they don't admire Josh Green that much. I have seen them characterize Cody Martin as an optics defender who shuffles his feet and is active, but isn't actually all that effective. So these are some warning signs and red flags to take into account when talking about guys like Cody Martin and Josh Green. But with that said, I would take Cody Martin over Josh Green just because his contract is cheaper and he's the more versatile player who can actually handle the ball for you. All right, moving on to my number 3 trade option, let's talk about the Memphis Grizzlies' John Konchar. John Konchar is 28 years old. He is 6'5" with a 6'7" wingspan. He's making $6 million this year, $6 million next year, and $6 million the year after that. 666, sign of the beast, what the heck. Anyways, John Konchar is a great hustle, garbage man type player. He is a really strong rebounder who really goes after it. He's had games of 17 rebounds before. Um, he just fights for it on the glass. And the Lakers have actually been rumored to be interested in John Konchar in the past. He's the type of guy whose defensive activity is infectious on the court, and it also actually shows up in the stat sheet at times because he racks up some pretty good steals and blocks numbers for a guard. John Konchar is strong. He's physical. Offensively, he moves well without the ball, but he can also handle the rock and initiate in a pinch at times as well. Really good connective passer who makes the right reads and moves the ball to the open man. So yeah, I would describe him as a really smart, high basketball IQ player on both ends. A really good connective piece. And much in the same way that I called Cody Martin a very, very poor man's Josh Hart, I kind of see John Konchar in that way, especially in the rebounding department, because again, he really crashes the glass. So yeah, John Konchar would be an interesting Max Christie replacement, even though he's not a terrific high volume 3-point shooter. He hits 35%, which is pretty good on his career. He's just a low volume shooter. But yeah, I like John Konchar's physicality and his versatility as well. So there is John Konchar. All right, now let's move on to my 4th trade target, my 4th Max Christie replacement, and let's talk about Matisse Thybulle of the Portland Trailblazers. Matisse Thybulle is now 27 years old. He is 6'5" with a ridiculous 6'11" wingspan. He's making $11 million this year and has an $11 million player option next year. So the problem with Matisse Thybulle is he's been out for much of this season with various injuries. I think he's on the tail end of recovering, but you do have to take into account the several injuries that he's had pile up and how well he can function the rest of this year. But with that said, if he's able to come back and the Lakers medical staff clears him and sees that, he's good to go, I wouldn't even be considering Matisse Thybulle as a play for this year necessarily, but more as a play for next year. But with that said, Matisse Thybulle is such a strong, athletic ox of a guard slash wing, one of the best high motor point of attack defenders at the guard and wing position in this league. His defensive intensity is also reflected in the box scores as he racks up the defensive stats in bunches. He's averaged 1.7 steals and 0.8 blocks the last 2 seasons. And he's always been one of the league's best steals and deflections leaders, and he wreaks absolute havoc in the passing lanes. Matisse Thybulle is also very athletic. He can run the floor well and make some pretty explosive finishes as a cutter or lob man. Now, he's obviously pretty limited offensively, but what I do like about him is in the last few years, he has improved in his 3-point shooting. He shot 35% from 3 last year, hitting 1.2 threes a game. That's a pretty healthy volume. And then in 2022-23, he shot 39% from 3, hitting 1.5 threes a game, though that was only through 22 games of play since that was the season that he got traded to the Blazers mid-season. But yeah, Matisse Thybulle is my favorite wing defender out of anyone in this group. He has the most upside. I really like his personality off the court. The only problem is the injury concerns and whether or not he can ever be even 75% healthy for this year. But honestly, I would do it just to have Matisse Thybulle on this team next year as well. All right, moving on to my number 5 Max Christie replacement target. These are going to be older players now, older veterans. And let's talk about the Orlando Magic's Gary Harris. Gary Harris is now 30 years old. He is 6'4" with a 6'7" wingspan. He's on a $7.5 million contract this year and a club option $7.5 million next year. He's essentially expiring. So Gary Harris used to be somewhat of the prototype for a solid 3&D shooting guard, albeit a smaller shooting guard. I kind of likened him in the past to Avery Bradley in his prime. Gary Harris could score, knock down threes, put the ball on the floor, hit a pull-up mid-range jump shot, and most of all, he always competed on defense and shuffled his feet. He's also a career 37% three-point shooter on decent volume. And then obviously defensively, he's scrappy. He knows how to crouch down and get into a good defensive stance and use all of the smart tools of the trade that a savvy veteran of his ilk would know how to utilize. I'm not really sure where he's at in terms of still having enough juice in his legs at this point, but he is only 30 years old and he hasn't really been playing all that much for the Magic in the last 2 seasons. So maybe he's refreshed. And I just think Gary Harris would be a good, steady veteran shooting guard for the Lakers to bring in, who wouldn't really need to do too much to show value on this team. And the best part is he's not really a liability on the offensive end of the floor as well. Again, I don't know how much juice he has left, but out of anyone that I've mentioned of this group, he's probably the best shot creator and offensive player, at least in his prime. All right, so there's Gary Harris. All right, last but not least, my sixth Max Christie replacement trade target. Let's talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder's Kenrich Williams. Kenrich Williams is 30 years old. He is 6'6" with a 6'7" wingspan. He's making $6.6 million this year, $7 million next year, and OKC has a club option on him of $7 million in 2026-27. Now, Kenrich Williams is actually more of a power forward defender these days, but he has been able to play the shooting guard and small forward position in the past. But yeah, he's a very rangy, lengthy forward defender who can guard the perimeter and guard wings specifically very well. I've seen him stick with really good scorers like Jaylen Brown in the past and really hold his own against them, cutting them off, cutting their driving lanes off, contesting out very well, shuffling his feet. And yeah, Kenrich Williams has always been known as a very versatile defender. Now, he doesn't play much for the Oklahoma City Thunder these days. He's only averaging 14 minutes a game, but he's quietly been having a pretty effective and efficient year offensively when he has gotten time. And kind of like Gary Harris, Kenrich Williams is just a solid, tried and true veteran who can provide some steadiness to this Lakers team that could use more dudes who know what they're doing and won't take too much off of the table. And so I don't know if the Oklahoma City Thunder would be open to trading a tried and true veteran like Kenrich Williams, who has been such an integral part to their culture. But if they're looking to shed salary and want to get something in return for Kenrich Williams, I mean, this is the type of veteran who I believe still has juice, whose length and measurables and smarts and know-how could really help out a team like the Lakers who are trying to go for it right now. So yeah, there is Kenrich Williams of the Oklahoma City Thunder. All right, so that does it for my list of 6 Max Christie shooting guard / small forward 3&D wing defender replacements. That was a mouthful to say. What do you guys think of my list? Is there any player that I missed? Who out of my list excites you the most, if any of them excite you? Let me know in the comments below, and please remember to like this video, and most importantly, please hit subscribe on this channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, it's off to the races. There's only about a day left to the NBA trade deadline. Excited to see what the Lakers do. But even if they don't do much of anything and just make a smaller marginal move, I think there's a lot to be excited about with regards to the rest of the season and obviously moving forward. All right, that'll do it. This has been Jonathan Hernandez of the Lakers Legacy Podcast. I will catch you guys next time. Peace.